Hey, how is everybody? Good to see you again. This is a new day for me. Spent a lot of time working on the samples and things, and this will keep you all busy making your jackets. So don't quit doing things. Just a few things that I wanted to make sure you know about. The fashion show has been canceled. It was supposed to be mid-April. Remember, we were going to have it, I think it was April 14th, and I think that was what the day was, a Wednesday or a Thursday. I think it was a Thursday. And so that is canceled. But if you are interested in having video done of your item that you've made, and I know there were some of you who in our class I was trying to push you into modeling your garment, and oh, you don't know how much I wish that you would be able to, but we're just not going to be able to do that this year. So if you want to video your garment, and I will find out, if you don't already know, through Lori, where we can send videos so that what you made can be posted and others can see it. And true that you will also get credit for it that way, fashion show credit. So I want everybody to be happy and working hard on our projects, our jackets. And this is the other thing, a couple of things. I'm going to try with my granddaughter Abby, who is going to show her face on the camera.
Yeah?
Here's Abby, who's filming me today. I just had a feeling at the beginning of the semester that we needed to work really fast, and I threw a lot at you, and feel like now we can dig a little deeper into those things that I started. And that's kind of usually how I try to present a lot of these things, is show you what our goal is and what we're going to look at, and kind of talk about it a little bit, and then go deeper and try to show the way to do it and the way to construct. We're going to try to have a little bit at least online for tomorrow. Abby has been editing and getting things prepared so that you can access. And you know, there were suggestions that that the teachers had. We had a meeting a week ago and talked about maybe searching through other teachers' material to have you access that. And the thing that I feel really strongly about is I've worked really hard to develop my skills in tailoring, and I tailor all the time. I've learned so very, very much by just doing it. And hopefully you're trying really hard to do these things so that you can build skill, because every single time you make a jacket, you learn more. And I've told you that. And so I really feel like I owe it to you, number one, because I said yes to this job this semester, that I would teach you tailoring. I've done so much to try to acquire the skill that I have, that I feel like I need to video myself and teach you what I know. And hopefully that will help. I don't mind if you research other people, but I do hope that you will listen and pay attention to what I try to teach you. I have brought together a lot of the skilled people that I have taken classes from, and the readings that I have done, and the experience that I have just by doing it, because you can talk and show and research and watch videos and all of that, but until you actually work with fabric and produce garments, and particularly jackets, and I haven't even shown you all the jackets that I've made in my life, but I've made a lot. I've brought in some, but that is where and when and how you really secure the skill to be your own. And so that's what I'm feeling responsible to teach you myself. And some other things that I want you to know are that the fashion department, the entire, I think probably the entire Maricopa Community College District wants, but I know at MCC, Mesa Community College, in our department, we're not going to give incompletes to any of you. We want you to do your best to finish, and you will have to the end of the semester to finish. And that's why I'm trying to put this training out so that you can access the instruction and have it available to you. I haven't yet, these last couple of days that we've been videoing, I haven't been able to really think through exactly how I'm going to address each of your issues, because I know that you will have them, and I would like to go in one-on-one and have conferencing with you. And I know that there is a place on our system, on the MCC system, where it's a group chat that I could probably interact with you. I haven't set that up yet, so that's going to be down the way a little bit, a week or two. It's just taken all of my time the last few days to try to do this videoing, and I've been dealing with, I haven't been well at all. My throat's been very, very sore, and I had to go into urgent care on Saturday to get some help. So anyway, doing the best I can right at the moment. But I want you to listen, try to follow what I'm trying to teach you, and apply it. I will try to get with you one-on-one somehow. We can text, or we can maybe even phone call. We'll have to see. I don't know exactly how, or to do, like, you know, chat room face to face. I'll try to find some way. I had considered having meetings with each of you here in my home, but I realized that my health is just kind of too not secure enough, I think, and I'm really fighting whatever it is I have, and I'm really sure that it's not the coronavirus, but it's something weird like tonsillitis or something, and it's not strep. They checked me for strep, but I just realized that it's my health and my husband's health in our home that right now I need to protect, and I just better not meet one-on-one in my home. I've just thought that through, and for now it just doesn't look like that's going to be possible. So what I'm thinking is that you can also video your work really close up and your problems that you're having. I know Carla Crace texted me last week when I sent out our class email and described to me the problems she was having with her bound buttonhole issue, and we talked that through a little bit. And so what's going to happen is I'm going to instruct you, and I will tell you different possibilities that you can try. And this is the thing that I need you to do, is to go in and really try these things, all right? I wish I was there to help you with the fitting a little bit better, because I know for some of you that was really an issue. And I know that I wish we had more time to talk about that, and maybe one of these video sessions, when my jacket gets a little more together, I can discuss a little bit better what you're going to look for and deal with if you do have fitting issues. Okay, we'll try to focus on that a little bit. But do try to correct the fitting issues as you go along too. We tried to get our measurements, we tried to get the pattern adjusted before ever cutting, and some of you had muslins that fit very nicely. So just going ahead and doing the work, putting together your garment, tailoring it, should have worked fine with the fitting, but I know some bodies are just more difficult to fit. So we'll work on that. But back to what I started with yesterday, I kind of introduced a couple of things. I started talking about the sleeve head, because I had introduced that right at the beginning or during the last class that we met before spring break. And so I have gotten my sleeves a little bit more installed. So we're going to go to that a little bit later. But one of the things that back when I talked to you about the sleeve head, I also was trying to talk to you about the collar and just all the different parts that we need to put together to finish those sections of the jacket. And so when Abby helped me video yesterday, we talked about our textbook. I sent out an email, and I hope all of you got the email. Nothing came back to me last week, so I hope everybody got our class email, and those are serious for you to pay attention to. And I would like for everybody to email me back and tell me that you got it. That basically will be your attendance, so you get credit. And I want everybody to make an effort to finish the class this semester, because the school and our department wants everybody to have the chance to do that. All right, but you've got to try to do the work. And we'll be lenient. We probably won't require what we would have otherwise, but we want you to try to do your best. But anyway, back to the textbook, page 76, Tailoring a Notched Collar. And you see all the parts. I tried to talk it through on the email, and I hope that you did pay attention on each of the little photos. It shows the parts, and it talks about these little markings right here. The notches are really important. Here you have clipping for the curved edge. You know that this edge right here was curved, it was round, and because you can see all the curve of this, all the what am I saying, billowing or shape of this little neck piece here, which is the neck facing. All right, so this had to be clipped here to stretch so that seam allowance stretches around the curve. And this one here is a slightly different style. This one, showing you, this one is one that has this neck facing right here. Okay, and you see this one just has the two lapel sides with no neck facing in there. And this part right here, as is that part, is the collar. All right, and I'm pretty sure that's going to be the upper collar right there. All right, so the next page, it shows the under collar being attached to the neck of the actual jacket. and it shows how this is all being prepared in here. One thing that I'm not liking that they left here was interfacing in the seam allowance. I suggest clipping that out. Clip out all this extra that goes into the seam allowance, because it's just going to add bulk around the neck seam. And then you see here, this is the facing and this is the upper collar. And this one right here is showing you the one with the facing that goes around it. Like, let's jump over to here. It would show the facing that would be inside underneath what you see right there. That facing right there would be. All right, so how to trim and press the neckline seams. That's where I'm gonna start back over. I went there yesterday a little bit with you, but I want to show a little bit closer how we're gonna press and trim these. I am sewing together my lapel, and this is just a sample. This is not a jacket. This is a sample of what I cut the upper part of the jacket pattern and the collar. Okay, and so it's just for a sample that I'm showing you here. Now remember how I showed you when we're going around a corner, okay? And these lapel points here determine how right angle you want those, because if the fabric is really lofty, and this fabric's fairly lofty, but if it's relatively lofty, it could end up making a little dog ear point with a little extra point. Let's say this. Let me show you my iron here. See how my iron point is right here? It might make a point like that if you're not careful. All right? That's kind of what I mean by a dog ear point. And I think a lot of you know that's what I mean. So I'm kind of reinforcing, and you see how I'm hand turning my wheel here. And you can also do a little bit of a back stitch here if you want to strengthen it up. But here we are. I have basted this together, the parts that I talked about yesterday, okay? You see all this meeting point right here, right here? All right, I basted it together, and now I'm stitching it. And I basted it to make sure everything would fit together properly. So let me show you. I know that right here, right there is where everything meets. I know this seam is gonna end up sewn to that point. See right there? So that's where I'm gonna stop. And I also know that this opposite side right here is gonna stop there too, okay? All right, and I'll kind of go back in and show you that a little bit more. But so I know that this right here is where I'm going to stop, and I'm going to make sure I'm not catching anything, pull everything out from underneath, so you only have, and just put your finger down there and feel to make sure that you don't have a thickness of some other seam allowance or something caught in there, because you know why I know that, to not do that? Because I've done it. Yep. So that's where we're going to end, right there. Right there. Right there. Okay? So let me show you why and show you how that works. So on this side, I stopped right up, right there. That's where I stopped. So that this came up to stop there. Okay, right there. That's where it's going to stop, right there. And the reason is because this collar is going to fit on, come into it this direction. All right? The collar's going to stop sewing right there. Right there. And then we're going to go in and trim. All right? So let's do it this way. And then after, well, let's do it that way. And then, because I've still got to stitch this together too. You see why we cut it out, we watch our directions, we fit it and pin it together, and then you see how I've hand basted it, and it tells us all of that in our manual, in our textbook, to do it that way. And then we can go in and stitch by machine. So right here, I'm going to find that same point right there, and I'm going to push all the seam allowances out of the way so that I'm not going to be catching anything that I don't want. I like this little machine. It is just perfect for just wonderful things. I've got to make sure though I've got it on kind of a big stitch. Let me get it on a little bit smaller stitch. Okay, so here, remember, you might want to do just a little bit rounded here. I'm not sure if that's what you want to do. That's kind of your artistic desire on these corners like this. Okay, so just so you know, this little machine I bought at an antique store. This isn't the one that I generally sew on, but you can hear its wonderful sound. It is just the most incredible little, wonderful little FOF machine that looks like whoever owned it hardly ever used it. And I paid $90 for it in an antique store, and it just, because it's portable, I can stick it out here on my kitchen table and do these demos this way. Just love it. It's a great little machine. You see how the reason that I lifted like that is because I saw that there was too much fullness coming at me. You know yourself, when you sew, the fabric moves away from you, but the little presser foot can push the fabric toward you and make a billow or a bulge, and you don't want that to be what's going on. You want it to stay in place. I did a lot of work trying to get this all basted together so that it would work well. And so right here, I'm trying to stitch really close together and just hand rolling the wheel that inserts the needle. And you see here, I'm pulling everything out of the way back here so that I can stitch right down to that point right there at the end of the collar. So when I get down there, I can hand turn the wheel so I have better control of it, and then I'm going to back stitch a couple of times. Okay, and then we're gonna stop right there and clip our thread. Okay, so we've got it stitched right down to that point right there. Okay, and then, as I did over here, I'm going to pull this back side up and this back side up and start in right there, which is just right across the seam allowances from where I just stopped. So I'm going to push all those upward. And if you get everything basted into place in the proper way and proper area, and I'm going to check in here, I'm going to pull stuff apart to check to make sure. If it's all basted in the correct way, you will know where to start and stop these connections. And what we're doing right here is making we're constructing the V section of the collar, okay, of this jacket. It's this pattern too that we're working on. And that's similar to more the patterns that most of you had in class. So just put a little bit of back stitch on that, holding it in place. And then here we're going to turn a corner. So remember how you can, the book shows us running clear off the edge and then starting up here and coming back down this way. And you can do that if that pleases you. I want you to make the collar points. I'm kind of rounding mine just like one stitch. But you can determine how you want to do that, because it's your fabric. Okay. All right. So here we have constructed the collar. Front and back is all sewn together by machine. These little points are where we met, the two back and front sides. That point and this point, it looks like we hit them pretty close on. And so the last part that we're going to stitch, let me cut that off. I've got so much basting thread in here. The last part that we're going to stitch together is, let me check here what I haven't stitched. This. From here, this part to there, and then we lift up because we want to make sure we don't, well, we've got to make sure we stop maybe right there and make sure that this is our dart, okay, the dart that goes underneath the collar, this dart right here. All right, so we've got to make sure that we incorporate it properly in this stitching. So you decide which side. I'm just going to go on this side and I'm going to stop right there. Okay, let's put a pin right there so you can see. I'm going to stop right there. So we're going to start here and leave yourself a little bit of space. I'll show you when we get to the other side to, whoops, it's going backwards, to stitch on your lining, because this is at the neck where the lining will be stitched into this area. So remember, we're going to stop right where we have the pin. A little back stitch there. Okay, so we've got that in place, clip our threads, and from that little spot up to here where we brought these two pieces together, this little piece right here on the jacket is this. Okay, so that's what that sews together, and it can get confusing. You just have to say, okay, I'm just gonna, even if I don't understand it, this is what it tells me, this is what the instructor's telling me. So make sure to put your needle down right in that same little spot where you just let off. Okay, right in that same little spot. And well, you know, sometimes you just start it slow. You can back stitch in there if you want, just like one little back stitch, and we're gonna sew right to this point, right to there. Okay, so maybe sometimes it's good to mark it with a pin. Sometimes it helps me, and pull all the extra everything out of the way so that you can get right up to that little spot. And I hope this little machine is not bad at like hitting pins. These are tough little things. These are little machines. I think Pfaff is a German machine, and you know, we know Germans are tough. So little, like my husband has driven Mercedes for many years. We call them German tanks. All right, so you see all these little pieces and parts sewn together on this side. let's take a look at it on this side. You see how we met up right there. You see how here's the larger lapel edge from the bottom, and see how you can tell by that we're going to have to go in and clip things out, because if we didn't clip it, it would look like that. It would stay like that. But you can see how this little piece fits in here, and we flip it over, and this little piece fits in here, and this is our dart, so we know this is the under collar and this is the upper collar. Okay, and we know this is the under collar because it has that seam in the center back. So we'll just work on this side. I'll stitch that one together by machine a little bit later. But you can see how, look at it, it just naturally, because of how we did our pad stitching, because of the way the pattern is constructed, even before we clip and press, it really kind of wants to just roll like it's supposed to. And even though we're not super finished with it back here, it does show us, it just chooses to the upper collar. Look how it just rolls backward over the under collar, and the under collar wants to curve up underneath that upper collar. Let me just tell you that as I was pinning and preparing this by basting together, if you match your notches the way they ask you to, there you will create in this area, particularly in this center, because here's our center seam, in this center back area, you will create, can you see a tightness on this undercollar part, and a more of an ease or fullness on this upper half? Okay, that's what you're looking for, because that's what helps it. The tightness pulls that upper collar into a curve. Okay, all right, so we've got that, and you know, take a look back there. So we're going to open it back up and go in and clip, and then I'm going to show you pressing it and getting it prepared to close it all the way up. Okay, so I've got my little scissors here. I guess here are my larger scissors. Now you remember, don't you, that the seam allowance, when we're grading seams, the seam allowance right underneath the public side is the longer one. All right, so we know here this is the undercollar, so this is going to be the shorter seam allowance because it is underneath. So let's go in and trim a little bit shorter. And guys, don't ever trim your seam allowances clear down to the stitching line, because that's going to destroy the whole purpose of why you have a seam allowance. The seam allowance is there to hold parts of the garment together. So if you cut them all away, your garment's going to come apart. So just cut. You see how this one isn't going to be super short, and I could maybe trim a little bit more off here and there. I'm probably going overboard not trimming it because I'm talking that way. But, and you see here's my notch, so I'm going to just trim just a tiny bit of that. And then wherever you see fullness, or you see that it needs, where there's fullness, you need to make V-clips. Where there's pull and stretch, like in the textbook, it shows you to do the curve clipping. And curve clipping causes the seam allowance, remember, to stretch a little bit. Okay. All right, so around here, we're going to clip, kind of miter it. And we're not going to go super close to where we stitched there, but we're going to go close enough. We're going to go closer than other places, all right? Closer than just on the seam allowance. And then we're going to trim this one down a little bit. And we're going to go in here and clip this so that this does not fill our collar point too full. So it will have space in there to go flat. And remember, on our interfacing, we trimmed a little bit of that out of that point so that it doesn't stuff full the little collar point. And then down in this area, we need to kind of clip these things back out a little bit because they fill up that space where all of those different parts meet together. So just do a little trimming in there and shorten them up a little bit. All right, and then in here we're going to trim just a little bit off. Just trim it to about a 3/8, like it shows in our textbook. It shows all of this. I'm just kind of doing it so you don't have to just look at the pictures. So trim these, and here we are at a new place, up the edge of our little vent. And so we're gonna, because this is the under one, we know it's the under collar because of that, we're gonna trim it just a little bit. But one is gonna be a little longer. Don't have them both the same. One's gonna be a little longer, one's gonna be a little shorter. And then around this corner, we're gonna miter or cut it. One a little longer, one a little bit shorter, and trim off these little points here too, because those can kind of get in the way. And then check to make sure, because let's make sure we've got upper and under. If you get confused which one is up and you trim the under a little bit tighter, just, it'll be fine. Don't worry about it. So just go ahead and clip on with the under one being a little bit shorter. Just clip on that direction. And here's the under one. And then I'll go clip the other side and we'll review that too. So under a little bit shorter, upper a little bit longer. Okay. All right, so we've got that side clipped, and you see how the difference in shorter and longer is not much. Shorter and longer is not much. And then trim off those corners. And let's do this other side. Finish up this side. Trimmed a little bit of it. So here we're going to trim that and this right here, and then this a little longer. Go in here and trim these. And same on this, the one a little bit longer, one a little bit shorter. It's not going to matter a lot which one. Just try to get the upper, the one that is going to show to the public, to be a little bit longer, or the one that's right underneath the public side is just a tiny bit longer. Okay. All right, so let's trim down this way. We know this is the under part, so let's trim that one a little bit shorter. It's the under because it has that dart. And then we're gonna, the corner, trim that. Trimming really does make a lot of difference. Trimming and then pressing. When I taught this the last time, I used my jacket as the sample, so I didn't have this. And then I closed up my own jacket, the brown one. I closed up my collar before I really taught that to you super well. All right, so you see how I've already kind of gone in and pressed these open the way they tell us in the book. So let's just check, and then I'm going to press it again and show you how to press it. So let's check these, see after clipping if these points look any better, okay, than they did before we clipped them. And then we'll go in and try to press and make it work better. My fabric is pretty lofty, pretty thick, so this area right in here, I have to be really careful to get those points nicely turned and pushed outward. And right in here is going to be way too full if you have anything extra in there. So that's why we clip that out. All right, and let's clip back our little basting threads. And then you see how, because we met right there, we stitched right up to it. We got that completely closed. If this ever doesn't completely close for you, you can always go in with a needle and thread, and just stitch right in here to hold it closed better. You can just slip stitch it closed. I've had to do that a time or two just because it just would not work well enough for me. So go in and push this point out and get that all ready. Try not to, scissor points are not the best things to use, but sometimes they're all you've got. So if that's all you've got, be careful. And you know, I have poked right through before. Done it. And I've tried always to go back in and repair, or you know, hide it somehow. It's just better to do it with a collar point turner. But you see how we now have it constructed, okay? Does that look pretty good to you? Looks pretty good to me. So here we are at the ironing board, and I'm going to find little areas like, let me just show you this. You see here where I have the dart, which is right underneath the collar, and it's got a little turning spot. This is a little pivot, okay, right here. So I'm going to trim out just to flatten things, just a little bit of that point off right there. And you see this little chunk right there? It's a little V chunk. That has to go too. Don't cut too close to your stitching, but cut that out too, so that the two sides of that seam allowance can lay up against one another. In fact, I may just take a little bit more out than that. I can't give you an exact amount. I mean, these are things that you just have to kind of feel it and see it and place it so that the two little sides, see how they can lie flat against one another. So my steam iron, this is my new iron. I'm not as familiar with this iron as my old iron that's all stained, but I figured I better not let you see that one. But this one has water in it, and it's all heated up. So we're gonna press over this, and understanding that this is the interior underneath, it's probably not going to damage anything if I do just go right in and press onto the surface and get these opened up. Now, you know, if I was in the classroom, I'd be asking you, why am I flattening one side and flattening the other side inside the collar? This is all going to be closed up inside the collar. All right, see how that's all flattened? And you know the answer, right? The answer is because this side is going to be the seams flat and open. It's going to fit over onto this side with its seams flat and open so that they mesh together. And the way we just press when we put two seams together is, first of all, press them open this way, and then we will figure which is the upper and the under seam allowance and use our press cloth for the public side. But look how that it's just asking to turn the direction that you want it to. Upper piece up in my cupboard that I didn't get out for today. I should have gotten that out. Okay, so we're flattening this all down, all the way around, all the way around. And this is just my sleeve roll that I have placed in here to give it some, you know, a really good hard roundish surface that I can get in there and do it. So press that open really nicely. It's not a bad idea. This is where I need my collar turner, but it's not a bad idea to go in and press the under collar and the upper collar apart like this. That's what we are told in our textbook to do. So go ahead and do it. And what this helps with is making sure that the under collar is pressed so that it doesn't peek out underneath and show when you've finished your collar. It'll stay back underneath. It should never be seen. The upper collar takes precedence over it. So let me come down to this end, pull that a little bit down. Now I want all of you to try to do this sort of thing. You could take like a wooden rolling pin, okay? You could wrap a rolling pin with a towel, you know, do it really tight against the rolling pin and make a tool out of that if you need to. I mean, there are ways. And I want you to press. It's really important to press all of these parts. If you will trim. Remember, first of all, we pinned it together. We pinned the pieces together, found out how they fit together, and then we stitched by hand, and then stitched by machine, and then trimmed, and then now we're going in and pressing. All right, so this is basically trying to show you the lesson that you looked at in your book about the tailored collar from pages, I think it was 79, was these pages, excuse me, 76 through 83 here, okay? So what I've been trying to show you is basically how that all goes together, how that all fits. Now we have this nicely constructed here. It's real happy with how it's wanting to lay out itself. Let's get this one punctured out too. Push it out, and then we'll do a press on it. And you know, if you find that these points are still pretty full of fabric and you just think that they could use a little help by trimming them out, these are some things you can do. You can go in and use your sewing machine to stitch around the corner one more time to reinforce it. You can make the stitching a little bit closer together, shorter stitch length, and then you can trim a little bit closer. Okay, trim out a little bit more fabric, and then you should be able to get it to turn and, you know, turn the shape that you want it to. And then once you do that, make sure to check if you've done it properly. They should all match from here down to here. They should be the same. And they should also be the same length from here to here. Okay? And they should be the same shape. You don't want any pointing up or rounding out. You want them all to be the same shape. And if you feel like in here, like I said, you want if it's too full, go in and trim out a little bit better. So now what I'm going to do, open these up. All right, we press them open. And sometimes you can go in and do invisible tacking right down this seam allowance here. Sometimes I've done that. Just needle and thread, matching color in through, like down, and just tiny little stitches so that they're pretty well invisible, and they just kind of stitch right in the ditch there. Okay, and hold the upper and under collar together. Let me press this little part in here. And you know, I'm sure there are scientific methods to this, but you just kind of do what you know needs to be done. Just think it through. I want it to be flat or rounded or whatever I want. So you lay things out and pin or press or hand stitch into place, baste it into place so that it does what you want it to. Make sure everything gets pushed and tucked and placed into place so that you can press it and make it look and lie the way you'd like it to. Okay? And I will tell you, guys, some fabric, I can tell that one needs to, there's a little piece that's trying to push out of its position. Some fabric is going to be easier than others, and you don't want to overpress. You see, I've got a press cloth and an old handkerchief that is wonderful. And a raggedy men's handkerchief just can't be beaten. They're wonderful for press cloths, and they're good size usually. But you see how I'm just going in sections and I'm making sure that everything underneath is in correct position as I press over it. And don't overpress. It's really hard to plump things back up after you've overpressed, and make sure you're on the right setting. I've got mine on wool and I'm trying to steam it. And oftentimes I suggest going on the under collar first. Right now I'm on the upper collar, and I think it'll be okay, but just, you know, think it through, because you're probably going to press upper collar and then under collar and then flip it, and it's like flipping a hamburger. Well, that side could use a little bit more. I know they say flip once, but sometimes you're going to want to go more than just once. Okay, this is our under collar, so we're really going to, I like to spray it and then steam press with this. Really get it some nice moisture in there, and keep your iron moving, because that will pretty well help it not to flatten and develop a shine. So this time we're going to help it. Let me press this under collar down a little bit better underneath here. And we're going to help it roll back over on top of itself in a better way. So let's get that into place. And you know, a lot of times, I know on my brown jacket right now, that's hanging over on my coat rack, it has basting all the way around the edge of the collar. Okay, that keeps it in proper placing too. Let's get this pressed over here on this side. So, I betcha by this time you're all saying, I wouldn't make a jacket for another human being with as much work in it to save my life. I'd tell him, kill me. Just kill me. It's too much work. But you kind of get to a point where this is what you would do. You would say, oh, I'll make it. But you're going to pay me a lot of money. Or, you know, I will make your life a living nightmare. So don't ask me to do it unless you've got some monies. But you know, one thing I learned that I could hardly believe, and watch what I'm doing here because I'm going to try to roll, I'm going to try to press this so that the collar gets its roll back, okay? Gets its proper roll returned. I don't know how many of you ever are familiar with the Lawrence Welk show. And even in today's world, the Lawrence Welk show is on PBS still. They're all reruns because it quit filming many, many years ago. But this is the point of all this. You should see the if you ever wanted to be a seamstress or a sewist and make costumes and have a job that was just nonstop, the crew, the cast, let's say the cast of the Lawrence Welk show had weekly new costumes, and the men, believe it or not, would have jackets that were custom made for them, and they all had to have the same color. They were all kind of odd, weird colors like lavender and, you know, spring green and things that just, it's like, really? And all of them would have a tailor-made jacket to sing like one or two songs. Yeah. So think of yourself being on the clothing or costume making crew. Think of that. Big old job. And I think they paid people pretty well. I think working for the Lawrence Welk show, the people made quite a good amount of money. All right, so we've got that curving, and I'm going to help it a little bit here. I'm just gonna gently press that in a little bit and try to get it to look really smooth and nice. All right, so there's our collar. Here are the two side lapels. I didn't press that one as well, but this one I pressed. And here we've got the roll, the neck roll in place. So you see how that, then this fits on the jacket. Which is the facing, and we baste it into place here and just leave that in so it holds everything in place. And then you enter here, just do a little clip, and then remember there were pins in the corners here so that we knew that marked the corners of the buttonhole. And so on this side we took our little clip up into where the pin, and I can see right here is that pin and this pin clipped up to the point of the pin, and then tucked it up underneath. And that's why these are all tucked up underneath and then pinned into place like that. Okay? And then we go in with, I've already entered in underneath, back underneath here with a knot in my thread, and then came up. We're going to slip stitch this in that little fold there. We're going to slip stitch this into place. So I have my thread out like that into the little folded edge, and then I take my needle point and go back right into the layers of fabric that are right behind the lip of the buttonhole, and I'm going to take this pin out so it doesn't get in my way. A lot of these do get in my way, but I'm then going to, and I'm doing with white thread so that you can see it. I keep moving it and makes it hard for Abby to follow me. Sorry. But you see how you're just going to hold it in place until you get that stitched in, and just as you go, tuck it back underneath in front of yourself. But we're just slip stitching it this way so that your little stitch here loops over and connects back behind. And I usually try to hold my thread so that it doesn't make knots. That doesn't mean it won't. Pull it real tight and just keep pushing with your needle the edge and poke into that seam allowance right behind the lip of the buttonhole, and then just attach it and just do that all the way around it. You'll get to the end eventually, and like I've said to you before, you can only stitch about this close, okay, because your needle just won't go any closer than that. So what you do is, if you want them closer, you come back around and stitch in between those. And let me show you going around a corner, and then we'll go to the next little item that I was going to teach you today. And just try to keep your thread. Sometimes it's better to not have as long a tail of thread as I have right now, because it likes to get caught on the pins, and if there's any way it can knot up and cause trouble, it will. Okay, and then if it loops like that, just pull the loop down and close. So you see how you're making a nice finished edge right there. So around the corner, these little points right here, we're going to stitch closer together than we did on the sides, because you see how that little V clip area wants to come out, poke its little head out. So just poke it back in there, just go back in thing. And since you're going to be same color of thread, not white, I'm doing white so you can see what I'm doing, you can just stitch really close together here. Just anchor those corners down like that, okay? Really close together, and just keep that little V point clip, just keep tucking it back under in there. Get it way back up under there. And this is how you make the back side. Stitch down the facing. Okay, does that help? Just keep going around and stitching real close together, and anchor this down in here, and when it keeps trying to come out, just poke it back in there. And it's really helpful to have very good light over your shoulder while you're doing it. But just, connect it and get it sewn down in there. Because when a buttonhole is being used, these corners get a lot of wear, okay, when you're buttoning in and out. And so that's where you're really going to need to have it sewn really down into place. And if it like I'm seeing a little bit of it not cooperating from this front side, just go in and keep poking it in, and you can stitch back and forth over this quite a bit until you see it's really well stitched. and in place. And it's going to end up stitched down like that. Okay, on this side too. And then once I get around to here, I'll come back and go around it again and really anchor these corners down. Okay, I've got all these pinned into place, and I think I've started sewing some of them. I've been preparing all this other stuff and just kind of haven't been getting that done, but I'm going to get that done in the next day or so. But what I wanted to focus on now is we talked about the sleeve head, okay? And yesterday I showed you how to put this little bias strip. Remember this little strip that I talked about? Mine's all caught with thread. This little bias strip for reinforcement stitched all the way around the arm side seam, okay, right at the edge. And only it kind of goes in from the edge of the seam allowance, probably 1/4 to 3/8 of an inch, so that we can stitch the sleeve into place. And then once I had this little bias sewn on, then I went ahead and stitched my actual sleeve into the arm side. And this, make sure you have your interfacing, the iron-on interfacing, if that's what you're going to use. That's always a good thing to put up there. And use your the guide from Susan, or from Claire Schaefer. But anyway, I hand basted the sleeve into place, and then I basted in, and this is how I basted in the sleeve head. Okay, I just basted it right into the seam allowance. All right, and I'm showing you the inside of the jacket, and then I'm going to turn it, and you notice we don't have the lining in yet. And then I'm going to turn it to the public side and let you see what it looks like now with the sleeve head inside it. I know I was showing Abby a little bit ago how the sleeve head looked, or the sleeve, just the top of the sleeve looked before I put in the sleeve head, and it just, you can see how it rounds it out and just really makes it look nice up in here. And then to have our shoulder pad, place the shoulder pad up in there, it just rounds it all very nicely. Rounds the whole part really nicely. Okay, but if you can get a close-up, Abby, of this, you will see that when I installed my sleeve, I made sure that the ease is, here's the shoulder seam, that the ease mostly rests in this area. Okay, this is not an Armani jacket that I was talking about yesterday, where this is flatter and then the ease is down this direction. This is a normal sleeve, jacket sleeve. And so when you prepare it, make sure that you run your basting stitch, machine basting stitch, from notches back or front, notches to the other side, at least one line, maybe 2 lines of stitching, and pull it, gather it a little bit so that it makes the ease, and then press it, and you can press it over the ham, press it and prepare it so that it's ready to be basted into the arm side. One of the ways that is really good to stitch a sleeve in is to start at the underarm seam. And I generally, most of the time, unless it's a sleeve with a lot of gathers in it, I like to stitch it on from the arm side, okay? Not on the sleeve side. And I'm particularly wanting to do it this time on this one because I have the basting, the line of basting on the arm side. Okay, so let's get it going here. I'm not as familiar with this little machine as my other one, so I'm just gonna try to get it going here. This is a wonderful little machine, but it's not as familiar as my Bernina is to me. So we're just gonna stitch this in all the way around. Okay, and I'm following my line of basting stitch. Okay, because I saw as I checked my sleeve, I really checked it to make sure that my sleeve hung properly. You want your sleeve to have the straight of grain line going perpendicular to the floor. All right, you know that we've talked about that before. And see, I'm stitching through all layers. I'm stitching through the sleeve head. But we have to have all of our parts of the jacket, the parts that are supposed to hang perpendicular to the floor, the grain of fabric has to run that way too. So you can tell with your sleeve. And you know what? If your sleeve isn't hanging properly, or I don't want to see any tucks or gathers at the sleeve head, you keep taking it out. Baste it in and take it out. If it doesn't please you, if you see any of those markings that are not correct, I do that all the time. If I sew a sleeve in and I see a place where it doesn't hang quite right, or it doesn't, ease is off, or something is not correct, remove that part, pull the stitching out and baste it back into place. And I will tell you, this is the thing, you will never like it if you don't do that. It'll bug you forever unless things don't ever bug you. But generally, sewers, things bug you. Or you'll probably find you'll never wear it if you don't fix it. So just go in and fix it, okay? It's the thing to do. It's the thing we do. And don't be upset with yourself if you do make a mistake. That's just part of the game. Making a mistake is part of the game. That's how we learn. And then we fix it. It's catching on my pad stitching. Okay, so we got our little sleeve sewn in. Let's cut our threads and turn it to the public side and see if we got everything, got it all stitched in there. Got it all stitched into place. And let's see what it looks on the public side. And put our little, we're getting real close to ready for our shoulder pads. You see how it all got into place there? And then sometimes it's a good idea to have the shoulder pad pinned into place when we go in to do a press. But remember, we pre-press this sleeve before we ever even installed it, okay? And just check closely here. You see how there are no tucks or puckers. It all fits in there just nicely. And when we go in to press it, we're not gonna just press it, all right? We're gonna lightly press it. We're gonna fit the hem inside like this and fit it nicely over the hem. See how that everything just has a nice spot in there. Sometimes you'll want to turn the hem maybe more on its taller side. Get your sleeve fitting on there really nicely like that. So we're going to just lightly touch press it and steam it a little bit. Don't just slam it, okay? It doesn't need that. It just needs a light press, and just to kind of smooth out certain areas, just lightly press it, and we'll see how it comes out. I think you'll see. You're gonna love how yours turns out. Okay, pretty good. I think I press a little bit more back in here on this. And you can go in and trim your sleeve head a little bit. Right in here, we're going to want to maybe press it a little flatter, because it's at the very tippy top that we want it to be nice and round. Okay, so press it so it looks good there. And then go to the front and press it till you like it here. You guys, this was the sleeve that had the hole that I got to weave back together. And let's see how it looks. You have to feel it's right in here where that was. So we got it hidden pretty well, reconstructed pretty well. But that's basically how that's gonna look. Kind of take a look at where it is right now, the garment. I'm going to try it on, and then we'll be done for today. Let me just take a look, because I want you to make sure before we put our sleeve hem in, that's going to be one of the next things we do is hems, that you have your sleeve hem measured correctly. And I did measure mine so that I knew that right here is where I wanted my sleeve hem to be. So take a look at our shoulder. Got the sleeve in. Get my hair out of the way. There's the shoulder with the pad is just pinned in, and the shoulder pad sticks out just a little bit beyond the seam. But here's the sleeve with the sleeve head in. All right. We'll talk more. Abby modeling the color sample, the notched color sample that we constructed yesterday. She's modeling it for us. Cute, huh? Turned out good.